I'm a high school dropout. So when I was growing up as a young child, my parents were good. They were in a very good financial position. All of that changed very quickly when I was like 10, 12 years old.
Did that have like some form of psychological effect on you?
It helped me become independent very quickly. I started working for a laundry business locally. My first salary I remember was $2,500 a month.
How exciting.
I started my first laundry business at 16. So I saved up enough money to like build a small kiosk in front of my parents' house. I think that the experience forced me to become very entrepreneurial, to think about life differently. No one is coming to save you. You have to do something to save yourself.
Onyedikachi is a leadership lecturer at the Institute for Leadership Advancement at the Terry College of Business, University of Georgia. As a leadership educator, his expertise lies at the intersection of inclusive leadership, personal and organizational leadership, and community engagement.
He's the founder of Postpartum Support Network Africa, a leading maternal mental health organization in Nigeria, working to raise awareness about postpartum depression. PSN Africa served thousands of women and now supports women across 4 African countries, namely Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and Botswana.
I want to dig deeper into the mental health landscape in Nigeria. And maybe we should focus for now on women, right? Is it possible at all to manage those situations when you're talking about postpartum depression before it even materializes, maybe before they give birth? And what common traits can people spot to recognize that someone is actually going through postpartum depression?
How much time do you have, Liza? I could talk about this all day.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Beyond Borders podcast. I'm your host, Liza. Today we are going to be speaking with Kachi, who is a professor at University of Georgia. He teaches all about inclusive leadership. So today he's going to be sharing his immigration story with us, and we look forward to hearing his story. Thank you so much, Kachi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Liza.
Awesome. So before we even get started, let's start with an icebreaker. If you had to wear one type of outfit for a whole year, what would that outfit combo be like?
Now, is that like personal stay-at-home outfit or like, professional work outfit?
You just get to choose.
Well, I'll wear like, that's a tough one now. I'd wear, the Nigerian up and down, buba and shokoto. Yeah,
okay.
Like a black kaftan.
Yeah.
I'll wear a black kaftan every day of the year.
I see. In and out of seasons.
In and out of seasons, because it helps. I mean, in the winter, you could survive. Atlanta winter, not New Jersey winter.
Not
that's
Minnesota.
True. Not Minnesota. That's true. Definitely not Minnesota. But yeah, and then in the summer, you're not going to die sweating too.
That fair enough.
But I feel like a black kaftan is very versatile. You could wear it to work. You could wear it at home.
Yeah.
Actually, here people would probably think it's your PJs when you wear it at home, but at work it still looks good. Especially when it's well done, tailor-made.
Yeah, makes sense. What's your favorite African food?
Favorite food period is just give me some really nice pounded yam with ogbono soup. Like ogbono soup with the cow leg and the goat meat inside. Pomo.
Assorted.
I eat that every day.
You eat that every
single
have to
day.
Eat something.
Every single day, man. Twice on Saturday. But yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if I'll eat swallow every day.
I eat it. I'm a true Igbo man, man.
You're a true Igbo man.
I eat swallow every day. Yeah.
Speaking about being a true Igbo man, let's hear about your background. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
I say I'm a true Igbo man, but I was born in Lagos. I lived all my life in Lagos for the most part. 28 years of my life in Lagos. So I'm an Igbo man because my parents are Igbos, but I'm connected to the culture still. But I feel more Yoruba sometimes than
really?
Igbo.
You speak Yoruba?
I do. I speak fluent Yoruba.
That's all I know.
But yes, so I did my undergrad in Lagos, my master's degree in Lagos, and so I was socialized to be a Yoruba boy, because everyone around me was Yoruba, spoke Yoruba. So,
I see.
so yeah, I'm from Nigeria. What else about my background would you like to know?
So, I mean, growing up in Nigeria, school up until like university. I know you did university and masters in Nigeria as well.
Very correct. Fun fact, I'm a high school dropout, so I did not quite complete secondary school in Nigeria.
You didn't?
I stopped at SS1.
Why was that?
It's a great question. Where do you want me to start from? But interestingly, so, you know, I come from a very humble background.
Okay.
You know, I say humble. When I was growing up as a young child, my parents were good. They were in a very good financial position, had the best that life had to offer, and all of that changed very quickly. Say when I was like 10, 12 years old. And so, you know, in Nigeria, as you know, we have the private schools and you have the public schools. I always went to the private schools, some really good private schools. But then when I was like 12, 13 years old and my parents did not have the resources anymore, many of my siblings, you know, were switched to public schools. So they went to public secondary schools. But I don't know if you understand how the public secondary school system in Lagos work, but you basically sometimes have to lobby to get your kids into the public secondary schools. Yeah, they have
that happens in the US as well, right?
Oh, I think so. I think it happens everywhere. Universities too.
Okay.
But I mean, so that was the case. I mean, sometimes you have to lobby, sometimes you get lucky, you know, your name comes out on the list that comes out every year. But I was not quite fortunate to get on those, you know, to get into a public school. I think it worked out for the best. So what I meant was, my parents tried to keep me in a private school, private secondary school. So I started JSS1, JSS2, JSS3, you know. But because they were not in the financial position to sustain that, it meant that I got kicked out of school very frequently, like sent home for school fees, you know, that kind of thing. And so, you know, I did that from GSS1 to GSS3, getting sent home for school fees very frequently. And then in SS1, I just rebelled. I said I was not going to do this anymore. And so I said I was not going to go back to school. My parents pleaded. I said no, you know.
So did that have like some form of, would I say, psychological effect on you? Just like the whole back and forth?
I think that what it did for me was it helped me become very independent very quickly. So, you know, drop out of secondary school at SS1, you're not just going to sit at home doing nothing. I figured, like, you know, I had to start doing something to make money. So I started working for a laundry business locally, pressing clothes, you know. My first salary, I remember, was $2,500 a month.
How exciting.
I was so excited when the first salary hit. But so I was doing that, you know, as a 15-year-old kid, ironing clothes and all of that. And it pushed me because I started my first laundry business at 16.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I saved up enough money to like build a small kiosk in front of my parents' house. And I started to take my own clients, you know, get my own customers, wash clothes. So I think that the experience forced me to become very entrepreneurial, you know, to think about life differently. No one is coming to save you. You have to do something to save yourself. And at some point, you know, I'll get there, but at some point when I was 19, it just hit me. I was going to like to go back to school, and I did what I needed to do, found my way to the university, and the rest is history.
That's very interesting, but we'll get to that soon.
No.
Okay, so at some point you found your way to the university. How did that happen, given that you dropped out of school, high school?
It's a funny story. So two things. I had a friend who was at Lagos State University.
Okay.
She's not in Chicago, actually, but at the time she was doing her undergrad, studying international relations at Lagos State University. Okay. And we became friends. We met online, interestingly. Then to go, you know, those funny web apps. And we got talking, and I think she was kind of like the first person to see something in me to say, like, hey, you need to get yourself back to school. Find a way. Like you cannot survive long term just by doing menial jobs. Right. And at the time I had an interesting, different career, but still she felt like I could do more with my life going back to school. And so you know how it is in Nigeria. You dropped out in SS1. I tried to go back to school, so I, by myself, started to study as a science student at the time, interestingly. So I tried to study by myself at home and prepare for WAEC just by enrolling for the WAEC examination. I failed very woefully. I had 6 F9s, first WAEC. Yeah, can you imagine my parents, my mom, having 6 F9s? But that was the case. But it was not a function of, it was not an absent. It was not because I was not intelligent. I don't think so. But I think it's because I just did not have any bad foundation. So there was no way I was going to pull it off. But then I tried again a couple years later. A friend of mine who was at the time studying law, his name is Ozioma, shout out to Ozioma. He was studying law at the University of Lagos. He sat me down and was like, I think you're going to do better like in arts and commercial than sciences. And then he got me all his like jam pass questions and all his key points at the time and textbooks. And I sat at home, and I'll talk about what I was learning with him. And I, took the WAEC again, this time as a art student. And I barely passed. I had 6 C6, but it was just enough to, because all you needed was 5 credits at the time. It was just enough to get me into school. So I did that. I wrote JAM. I had a fairly decent grade too. And I got into the Lagos State University to study psychology. And that's the journey.
That's very interesting. I mean, we'll come to your journey as a professor very soon. But it's thank you so much for sharing your background with us. I'm also very curious to learn more or know more about like the businesses you did. So you started the laundry business. Did you do anything after that? How were you basically sustaining yourself?
So yes, I mean, I started a laundry business at 16 and I did that till I was 19. I think I did that till I was like mid-20s still, but at 19, I got interested in something else. I had a friend of mine who had an older sister who was a makeup artist. She had a makeup studio in Ikeja, Lagos at the time. And I remember just sitting at home watching TV then, not to like call out any brand names, but Sleek Makeup at the time was really an OG brand. They just came into Nigeria to set up business, and I was watching, a TV, I don't know if it's just like a feature done on them and their business. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, I can see myself actually doing this. Because, as a dumb young kid, what did dumb young boys want? They wanted money, they wanted girls. And some attention, and being a makeup artist gave you both, gave you money, and gave you the girls. So at 19
so that was your focus at
that time, yes, at 19 years old, a teenager, that's what you're thinking about. And I thought, okay, I could do this and I could do it well. And so I spoke to him and I said, AY, that's his name. I was like, AY, like, could you help me speak to like Auntie Ronke to like see if I could, come train with her? And she was very receptive, very supportive. She was excited to train her first male makeup artist because it wasn't very mainstream at the time in 2008, 2009. And so I did that. I trained with her and I loved it. And after training with her, I started my own business.
How long did you train?
I trained for around like 6 months. It wasn't anything intensive. But I started my own business. I had a brand name called Kachi because I did makeup and gele, the headscarf, hair ties. And in 2011, I met this amazing young photographer called Ayo, and he super talented guy. He had a photo studio, and he reached out to me to say, could we collaborate and have like a makeup photo studio? And so, we started the business then, just doing makeup, getting clients who needed pictures for their weddings and things like that. And so that was like my first real business post my laundry business, and I did that, and it helped me get through college. Paid my tuition, through my undergrad.
So you started that before
I got into school.
You got into school.
I'm a late starter, so I got into university like 20 years old, 21. So it was like 1 year before I got into school that I did that.
I see. And what were those? So were those profitable businesses?
They were very profitable. Very profitable to the point where when I was getting to college, I told myself like I was just going to college to tick the boxes, you know, to tick that box like, oh, I did it, and oh, I studied this, and oh, I have a degree. So I had a couple boxes I needed to tick, but I never, you know, at 19, 20, I never saw myself like going into academia or like, because I did not think it was for me. And so my goal at the time was just to be able to like grow my business. I wanted to be like top 5 makeup artists in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, because you know, I had some traction. I had an older sister who was into this marketing communication space, and so she was working with some really big clients and gave me some opportunities. So at 21, I had Etisalat at the time as a client. You know, I was doing some really nice gig, making some really decent money at the time for a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
So it was very profitable. Even laundry was very profitable. In fact, like I said, I kept doing the laundry business up until when I was like 23, I think. Okay. Because I had a roommate when I was in college who also owned a laundry business, and we collaborated and we, you know, tried to grow the business at the time, Michael Afia. So it was very profitable. He was paying himself through college. I was paying myself through college. And so it was good enough.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. And I'm just curious to know what key lessons starting a business at a young age taught you. Maybe you could share about 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that foundationally what I learned was that success, you know, required you to be great with people. And so, you know, it's a customer service business, the laundry business is a customer service business. So you build a relationship with clients, you trying to gain their trust very early on as a 16-year-old. I remember the first client I had came into my kiosk and he looked at me and was like, where's your oga? Like, where's your boss? You know, and I'm like, I'm the boss. Like, it's my business. Like, he's not going to give his expensive shit to a 16-year-old kid. Wow. And I'm like, trust me. I mean, you just need to trust me, you know. And he took a chance with me. He's passed now, but he took a chance with me, and I would never forget it. But maintaining that business relationship took a lot of like. You need a good interpersonal skills. You know, you go to the client's house, pick up their clothes, interact with their family, take the clothes back, communicate with them, you know, when things are delaying, you know. And so having that relationship skills was important, and it helped me to like kind of hone it at the time. The same for being a makeup artist. You need to be really good with people because you basically have to enter their personal space to do the job, you know, so they have to feel very comfortable around you. And so a lot of the early success I had was down to just being conscious about developing those interpersonal skills, and they've served me down the line, even now as a teacher.
That's awesome. What other skills did you learn?
You know, communication skills, more of the interpersonal skills, diligence and being conscientious, so like working really hard. Now research, sorry about that, but research suggests that conscientiousness is one of the most important factors when it comes to whether or not the person will be successful. And that's just like being really diligent and pouring your heart and working really hard. And you need that as a teenager doing a business, to gain people's trust. You need to like, you know, when you say you're going to get something done at a certain time, you get it done. You can easily win their trust that way. So just being conscientious was something that I think that I developed at a very, very young age by doing that, you know, doing business that early. Right. But also, like I said, the communication, interpersonal skills were like the most important things I picked from that.
That's awesome. So before we even move further into your uni experience, of course you did your master's and all of that. How many siblings did you have? That's one part. And what was the response of your parents like, knowing that their child didn't finish high school, but then some years later, you studied, you worked hard to get yourself into uni. What was the difference between like the first time of you not finishing school to some years later seeing their child get into school? Like, what was the response in terms of like, from their lens, basically?
So when I think about my life here, I think that my parents played a significant role. So my dad, it wasn't his intention. He never planned for his son to drop out of school. He worked really hard to provide a great life for us, but things happened the way they happened. So I always saw that he haunted him, like he killed him on the inside to see me just like being at home doing nothing, or like going to work at the laundry business. I remember the first time I came back from work, my dad just felt so sad, he almost cried just looking at me come back home. I was very tired. He was like, how did that go? I was like, I was standing pressing clothes. And they were disappointed, they were sad, but they were very supportive. If that's what you wanted to do, we were going to support you to do it. But when I failed exams, typical Nigerian parents, they were very disappointed. Actually, like the people who had credits, they have two heads. I got that a lot from my mom, so it was just a normal, typical Nigerian parent disappointment. But again, like I said, the importance of a present parent, and my dad especially, cannot be overstated. So while my dad lost his job and could not like provide materially, he provided in other ways, emotionally, spiritually. As an adult now, you appreciate a lot more the sacrifices your parents made. So for example, the small things, like my faith is important to me, but like I say that now, but growing up, my dad would wake us up in the morning and pray together and read a passage of the scripture together consistently till I left the house at 19. So as an adult now, you think about the consistency required to do that, every day. When you have 5 kids, because I have 4 siblings. So he was very present, and not just providing my spiritual needs, but also emotionally. Like, one time when I failed, my dad sat me down and said, your older sister is in college now. She's very smart, very intelligent. Your older brother's in college, very smart, very intelligent. They're all Ekwerikes, yeah? And you're an Ekwerike too, you're cut from the same cloth, you're very intelligent still. So do not allow this. I would never forget that 4 a.m. in the morning woke me up from sleep to tell me that he has a lot of faith that I was going to come good. And so even when I had setbacks, I would remember that my dad believes that I'm going to come good. So I was definitely going to come good. I'm an Ekwerike, So that belief that was instilled in me as a teenager was very important, and I don't think you can buy that with money. And so even though materially we were struggling, I always say to a lot of my friends, like, even though we grew up very poor, I never felt poor. It's like, and so poverty, we were poor by every metric,
Society.
Yes, like we lived below $1 a day, we did not know where our next meal was going to come from. But I never grew up thinking I was a poor kid, because I was surrounded by love, by people, by present parents who provided every other need that I had. And I saw friends of mine who might have been okay financially, materially, but you could tell they were lacking in other aspects of life. So they actually felt poor to me. They looked poor to me when I looked outside, because I could see that they were yearning and longing for something that they could not have in terms of like parental support, parental presence, and I had all of that. So
the love factor.
It plays a huge role. You need to be loved at home to thrive outside.
Absolutely.
I believe that importantly. Now, don't get me wrong. African parents are African parents. Nigerian parents are Nigerian parents. They're going to wield the big stick. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to catch some smoke. But other than the typical like trying to discipline me, because I was drop out of school rebelling. Nigerian parents don't go and tolerate that. So I butted heads a lot with my mom, but it was just a normal youthful exuberance and Nigerian parents doing what they need to do to keep you on the right path. But outside of all of that, it's very loving, supportive environment that I grew up in, and I think that played a huge role in shaping who I am now.
That's amazing. Were you the last kid?
No, I was the third. So I had 2 older ones.
Shout out to all the third kid. I'm third as well.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. The ones who get forgotten. Yeah, because the parents are paying attention to
like in the middle,
the older ones.
Yeah, we're not the first, we're not the second, we're not the last.
We're not the last.
You see those ones in the middle, they're like,
I joke, I actually made this joke recently in my class. It's like, I was the black sheep who became the goat, So, you know, you're like,
I love it.
you a third child, you know, problematic because your parents, you know, do not know what to do with you. You know, you're not the baby of the house, so they're not giving you all the attention and spoiling you. You're not the older one, so they're not holding you to the highest standards still. So you're just there. You get away with a lot of things. So I have 2 older siblings and I have 2 younger, beautiful sisters, and I'm right in the middle. And yeah.
That's good. So you talk a lot about helping people lead themselves. How important is that? And how did your background lead you to that, basically to that philosophy?
So, you know, I'm a leadership educator, yeah, so I teach people how to lead. But the premise, you know, how I start this work is you cannot lead other people if you cannot lead yourself. And leading yourself requires you to know yourself. I think that one of the things that really helped me be successful was that from a very early age, I was reading a lot of books that basically challenged me to do a lot of introspection. It's like understand who you are, understand what your strengths are, understand what your weaknesses are. You know, I read, when I was 20 years old, I read Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence. I thought that book was life-changing for me. Just how do you regulate your emotions? How do you identify what you're feeling when you're feeling it in real time? And how do you channel those emotions to, you know, and use it in a way that's productive? So I had a lot of, you know, interest in learning about myself early on, and I studied psychology, so that helps. And I realized that, you know, helping people lead themselves was the first step. Helping people know themselves was the first step in helping them lead themselves. And when people lead themselves effectively, it's easier for others to trust them to lead them. You know, because I can see you doing great with your life. You're leading yourself well. You have a sound knowledge about who you are. People respect that. And so it's easier to build a relationship then when people can see that you're doing the work to lead yourself. So that's how I enter into the work. And that's what's guiding a bulk of the work that I do currently at the Terry College of Business with undergraduate students, is teaching them how to lead themselves. So we do this using, you know, psychological assessments, helping them to slow down and reflect on who they are and think about how they can leverage now their strengths to lead others effectively. So yeah. That's
amazing. And I think like you doing that in Terry School of Business, right? College of Business, is also very important because a lot of maybe MBAs are trained to manage, not necessarily lead. Have you seen that play out in your work so far? So
currently, I teach undergraduate students. I'm in a program called the Institute for Leadership Advancement, which is an institute within the Terry College of Business that's set up to like help students learn how to lead. But yes, you're correct in the sense that even when people talk about leadership, the conversation just revolves around managing others. And leadership is way more than just managing people.
Right.
Okay, so yes, so we the focus for me is to help people learn how to lead and you know the skill set necessary. While management, I think management is required to lead, but that's not the only thing you need to know when you're thinking about leading others.
Right. So before we even like come into talk more about your immigrant journey, so after being at the Lagos State University, right? You did your master's. And what did you do your master's in?
Clinical psychology.
Clinical psych. So you still continued on the psychology?
Oh yeah. So what I did my undergrad psychology. When I was in my 3rd year as an undergraduate student, I had clarity about what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
I wanted to start a non-profit that was going to support people using the knowledge that I had in psychology. And I wanted to be a professor of clinical psychology.
Interesting.
So 3-pronged, fail-proof, you know, life strategy that I had at the time. So yes, while I did not think I was going to be teaching leadership now, you know, I always knew I was going to teach, you know, at the university at some point in my life. So I went right after college to do a master's in clinical psychology. And I practiced for a very long time as a therapist. So, Liza,
in Nigeria.
if you pay me enough, I might hold a one-on-one session with you, help you unpack all your childhood traumas.
I'm wondering, do I need therapy right now?
No, but on a more serious note, though, so I worked with a rehab, spent some time, working at a rehab. My focus at the time was helping individuals who had substance misuse. So I worked with a lot of individuals struggling with substance dependency. But I also had an interesting focus on people who also struggle with mood and anxiety disorders. So depression, anxiety, bipolar affective disorder. And then I narrowed in and I focused on women who struggled with the perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. So postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. And then, so all of that work and all of that interest led me in 2015 to starting a nonprofit organization called Postpartum Support Network Africa. And so PSN Africa is a passion project of mine that I hold very close to my heart. In 2014, a relative of mine suffered postpartum psychosis, which is, way more complicated than depression after childbirth. So after she had a baby, she became psychotic, lost touch with reality, started to see things that other people could not see, started to hear voices, thought the baby was after her life and was going to kill her husband. So Nigerians are very uber religious people. So you think about a woman who just had a baby saying she's hearing voices and she's seeing things. You can imagine the reaction of the family.
So say she's possessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people thought she was under spiritual attack, and people were taking her from one pastor to the next, from one mountain to the next. And then don't get me wrong. I think faith is important and prayer is important. But when a person is ill, you need to get their medical help.
Right.
And so she did not receive the medical help that she needed at the time. And I was only 24, 25 years old at the time. Nobody was taking me seriously when I was saying hey, I think that she needs to see a psychiatrist, or I think she needs to see a therapist. And so she suffered way more than she should have suffered. And so seeing that just led me to hey, I was pointing fingers, say, how come there's no resources to support this woman? And I asked myself the question, well, I'm pointing all these fingers I'm a therapist. How come I'm not providing any resources to support this woman? So that was the start of PSN Africa in 2015. I was fortunate enough to have a friend whose dad was the medical director for one of the big, government hospitals in Lagos. Scheduled a meeting with him, Dr. Oni, amazing man. He's late now, but I sat down on his dining table one morning and we were having breakfast. And I pitched the idea to him hey, I need you to take a chance on me. I want to come into your hospital and educate moms about postpartum depression and screen them. And he was sold, and that was the start of the organization. And so from one hospital, we started to move from hospital to hospital, educating moms about depression, screening them for it, and building the capacity of the doctors and the nurses to be able to recognize and refer moms who were having mental health challenges. And we've been doing that now for the last, next year's going to be 10 years. We've been doing that work in Nigeria.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to dig deeper into the mental health landscape in Nigeria. And maybe we should focus for now on women, right? Is it possible at all to manage those situations? So when you're talking about postpartum depression, before it even materializes, maybe before they give birth, is it possible to manage that situation? And what common traits can people spot to recognize that someone is actually going through postpartum depression?
No, that's a good question. So how much time do you have, Liza? I could talk about this all day.
Let's go.
But when it comes to postpartum depression, the number one risk factor for women is having a partner who's not supportive. That's the number one risk factor. So if you're married, your husband not being supportive. If you're single, your boyfriend or your fiancé not being supportive is the number one risk factor. So if you're a woman and you are pregnant and you know that your partner's not supportive, you're at risk. You know, I've never had a baby. I've never carried a baby, but women I've spoken with talk about how life-changing it is. It's a significant life moment, and it's very stressful, and it naturally very anxiety-inducing. And so, if you do not have the support of the person who, I don't want to say put you in that situation, but the person who you're doing it with is not kind of present, it makes you feel very vulnerable. It makes you feel, overwhelmed, and that could trigger postpartum depression. So we noticed that moms start to show symptoms of depression even during pregnancy when the spouse is not supportive. So that's the first trigger. The second trigger, of course, is genetics. So if you have relatives who have suffered depression at some point, which is harder for us as Nigerians because we don't talk about it. It's when you grow up that you realize that, there's somebody in your family who had probably had a mental illness. But when you're young, you don't see it because we conceal it, and it's a taboo subject. So many people don't realize it early on, but genetic, susceptibility is another problem that can complicate it. But in terms of what you could notice, the first thing is having no interest in doing what you typically enjoyed doing before. And so you like to beat up your face and look good, and all of a sudden, you get pregnant and you don't want to do makeup, you don't want to do your hair, you don't want to go out, you don't want to care for yourself, and all of the things you like to do before you don't want to do anymore. That's the first symptom, right there. And it's hard to spot because people think like, I just don't care about this anymore, I have other priorities. But there's something in there that we should pay attention to. The other one is isolation. So you start to withdraw, want to be by yourself all the time, want to just be on the bed and not do anything. That could be a symptom too of depression. Just weepiness. Everything around you seems to be going well, but you just find yourself crying. You're like bawling uncontrollably is a symptom of depression. Emptiness, just feeling very empty, like your life has no purpose, is also a symptom of depression. Lack of sex drive. Now, I know a woman is pregnant, you expect her not to have sex, but doctors actually encourage you to have sex during pregnancy, safely, of course. So having no interest at all in sex, having very low libido is also a symptom. Eating too much, actually, Liza, you're nodding your head way too much.
I'm familiar with that.
That dependency. Trying to like food being the only thing that's bringing you joy, as it were, and just binge eating could be a symptom too. So those are a couple of symptoms, and then of course the one we look out for, which is a medical emergency, is when you start to have thoughts of killing yourself. So suicide ideation is a symptom too that we pay attention to.
I see. So what resources? Obviously, right now in 2024, there are more resources available for people on the African continent.
You like to think so?
Let's focus on Nigeria. The awareness has started building up gradually, especially in more urban cities like Lagos. Let's not even talk about the remote areas because that's a whole different discussion, right? So the awareness has started building up about mental health in Nigeria. But what resources can women, let's even focus on women now, tap into to basically help them with their mental health? And also, speak about your organization as well. What kind of resources do you guys provide?
Not to brag, but honestly, we're the ones doing the work in Nigeria right now, providing the resources for women who are pregnant, struggling with postpartum depression. So what we've done is to build a network of clinical psychologists who are passionate about supporting moms, and sometimes we're able to offer the services for free when we get grants to subsidize the cost. Other times, we just have a relationship with a therapist within the network to say, provide the service at a discounted price to the moms. So what we do is we go into the hospitals because moms sometimes they feel these things but don't have the language to articulate it. So you could be depressed but not even know what's going on. You just think you're sad, but depression is way more complicated than that. So the first work is to help these women understand what might be going on and give them language to be able to articulate and make sense what they're feeling. And so we go into the hospitals to educate the moms. So that's one resource that's available in many hospitals. It's just volunteers going in to teach and educate moms about the symptoms, how to identify it, what to do. That's the first thing. And then providing phone numbers, contact for them to reach out whenever they start to identify the symptoms. So that's one resource available. But we do have psychiatric hospitals in Nigeria. So, you heard about Yaba Left. And that's the challenge, is that
famous one, and there are a lot of like negative.
It's the stigma around it, so it's very stigmatized. So a lot of moms don't want to go there. Like, what do you mean I need to go to Yaba Left? But now we have teaching hospitals like the Lagos State Teaching Hospital and the Federal Teaching Hospital in Lagos. They have psychiatric units. And then there's also the military hospital where I actually trained in Yaba, and they have a psychiatric unit too. So those hospitals can provide help when moms struggle with postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression. It's just getting the word out there, making it okay for these women to reach out and use the services. That's the work that needs to be done.
Right. What role does faith have to do in all of this? Talking about mental health, even in terms of like the resources, what role does faith have?
Again, like I said, I'm a person who values faith, so I'm not trying to like dunk on faith, but it's a double-edged sword. Right. Okay, so on one hand, I do think that praying helps. It helps you cope with your mental health challenges, because one is cathartic, so you can talk about how you're feeling with somebody who you believe is capable of doing something about it. So that helps you manage your anxiety, and I recommend that, because talking about how you feel, one, helps you make sense of it, and gets the weight off your chest a bit. So it does help. But the challenge is when people start to think about the symptoms of mental health challenges as spiritual problems. And so when they think about it that way, then, so it's like someone has cancer and you say, oh, let's take you to my pastor. No, they need to go see, they need to get chemotherapy or something. They need to get cancer medication, But because, mental health challenges are not physical challenges, people do not treat it with the same urgency and the same seriousness, so they take them to pastors. Now, many of these religious leaders complicate the problem, because they exploit these people, and we know how this plays out in our home country in Nigeria. These people go give them monies, so that they can pray for them. And if I get money from you from praying for you, I'm not going to tell you to go to the hospital. So they take advantage of that, and that complicates the problem. And then people around them believing it's a spiritual problem too, start to avoid them, And social support is crucial when you're struggling with your mental health, and then they feel more isolated, and so even more vulnerable when they interact with these religious leaders. So I do think that religion, faith complicates the problem, but also provides some help in terms of the person's personal faith and their relationship with God. Whenever the person is talking about how they are feeling, it does help them. But when the person is just only looking to their religious leaders for support, that's not the support, that's not the help you need. You need a professional who's trained to deal with illnesses like that.
So let's try and make it a bit more practical. Do you think faith and medical can work together?
So
if yes, how? If no, why?
When you say faith and medical working together, I think an individual's personal faith, there's something to be said for your personal faith, and so your own individual relationship with God and being able to have that relationship, I do think it's useful. I think there's utility to it. So just like I said, talking to someone who you perceive to have higher powers, who is capable of helping, makes you feel less anxious. So there's something to be said for that. But when you're saying if faith and mental health can work together in terms of like religious leaders stepping in and playing the role of counselor or therapist, I'd say no. It's like having an epileptic seizure and you're taking me to like a man of God. Like I need to speak to somebody who has experience, who's like a neurosurgeon, who can help me and prescribe medications that can help me deal with my epilepsy, not somebody who's just going to pray over me. Now again, I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to discount Christianity and prayers. What I'm saying is you need professional help. And so knowing when to seek professional help is crucial. And if you have a faith and you still want to speak to somebody who's going to pray over you, that's fine still. But do not just do that and not get the professional help that you need.
I see.
You know, when I speak to people, I always use the example, when I speak to Christians about this, I always use the example of Timothy, who had a stomach problem. I don't know if you know this, but Timothy in the Bible had a stomach problem, and he was friends with the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul was an apostle of Christ. He could have laid his hand on Timothy's stomach and healed him. And Timothy said, and Paul told Timothy, like, I think you need to take a little wine to help with that stomach problem of yours. And so getting help is important, you know, physical help is crucial if you want to feel better. And, you know, I've had a lot of challenges on this subject, so it's interesting you mention it.
Yeah.
Because even in Nigeria, you have moms who do not want to get, you know, a C-section because some religious leader has told her, you can do this as a Hebrew woman, you know? Like, there's a lot of ways that religion and faith complicates healthcare that needs to be spoken about.
Absolutely.
But in a way that's respectful, of course, so that we don't, you know, offend anybody, because that's not my intention at all. But I do think that when you have a physical ailment, that you get physical care. And if you have a mental ailment, you get mental health care, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally valid for sure. So let's talk about your transition from Nigeria. You worked as a clinical psychologist, and what made you move to the US?
That's a great question.
Study leadership.
Yeah, so, you know, the work I was doing with PSN Africa, I was loving that work, but I was 25.
Did you do it full time?
No. So I had my job as, you know, in the rehab, you know, working in rehab as a therapist, and I was doing that part-time running PSN Africa. I mean, we got a grant in 2017 that helped us scale, and so we were able to hire people and take some of the work off my shoulders. But I was doing that work and I was loving it, but I was very young. But I had a unique opportunity in 2017. Thanks to the work that I was doing with PSN Africa, I got selected for the Mandela Washington Fellowship.
Got it.
So in 2017, the Mandela Washington Fellowship, you know, US State Department Fellowship, identifies young African leaders, brings them here for a 6 weeks leadership institute. All expense paid, you know, you get to learn from some of the best leadership professors about how to lead. You get to meet with a lot of US leaders here. You know, we got to meet senators and representatives. And so when I came down here in 2017, my institute was at the Staley School of Leadership in Kansas State.
I see, got it.
So while I was there for 6 weeks learning about how to lead, you know, I was just very fascinated by this. I met their undergraduate students who were learning some of the things I was learning. I was thinking, this is crazy. This is a 19-year-old young person who's learning how to lead effectively. And I'm only just learning these ideas at 27, 28. And so I started to think, like, how powerful would it be if we could take these ideas and teach our own people how to lead, like teach young non-profit leaders? Because in Nigeria, you know, everybody and their mom has a non-profit organization.
Every single person. And a lot of times, it doesn't last for more than 1 year.
And does not move the needle too on any of the challenges that they're trying to make progress on.
There's no real impact.
Because they don't have the skill set to do the work.
Absolutely.
And so that's what, you know, got me interested in doing this work. So when I went back to Nigeria in 2017 after the 6 weeks institute here, I started to do like step down training for folks using the things I had learned. You know, I've always been passionate about teaching, so it was easy for me to go back home. Got together with a couple of my friends who were on the same program, and we started to do some trainings in Nigeria. So that's my entry point into leadership education. A professor of mine saw posts that I made. I say a professor of mine, but like, one of the professors at Kansas State at the time saw a couple of the posts I made on social media, training folks around leadership, and reached out to me and said, like, that's really cool that you're doing that, you know, and said, like, oh, would you be interested in like applying to our PhD program. We have this brand new PhD program in leadership communication. Would you be interested in like applying for it? And I was like, say less, say less. So I jumped on a Zoom call, spoke to him. His name is Tim Steph Ismail. Really amazing, Dr. Tim Steph Ismail. And so we spoke, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I think you should apply. I think you're going to be a good fit for this program. And I did apply, and I was fortunate enough to get a full ride, an assistantship to support that program. And so that's how I came back to the States, the Staley School of Leadership, to study, to do a PhD in leadership communication.
Did you have to do a standardized test, Jerry?
No, I think that because I had been at the school as a Mandela Washington Fellow, it allowed them to waive those requirements. So I did not need a GRE.
Okay.
I had nothing to prove. So I did not need a GRE. I was very fortunate. This is why I don't like to talk a lot about my graduate journey, because I know it's not traditional. I did not need a GRE, did not write GMATs, none of that. I just wrote an application, and I was selected and given an assistantship, and I did that. And while I was there, I had a chance to start teaching. So opportunities opened up. I was given teaching responsibilities because certain opportunities opened up. So I started teaching public speaking, and then later on I got more teaching responsibilities. And so that's how I got socialized into being a professor of higher ed.
That's awesome. So you finished the program at Kansas State City?
Kansas State University. Manhattan, Kansas.
Okay. And then moved to University of Georgia to start teaching. What has that experience been like? Especially, I want you to also come in as an immigrant. Were there any culture shocks you experienced teaching here, and how has your Nigerian background really shaped you as a leadership professor?
So, talk about culture shocks. When I started teaching at Kansas State, first day I went to class, finished teaching, students walked up to me and said, "That was a great class, Kachi."
And you're like,
So because of how we're socialized, our relationship with power and authority in Nigeria is different.
Yeah.
Okay, so here I'm teaching this class. You think about how I was socialized into higher ed in Nigeria. You call a doctor by their first name, you fail the class. A person who's a professor, you call them doctor, you fail the class. So that's my socialization to higher ed. And so you come here, and students are calling you by your first name, and so it throws you off a bit. Plus, culturally, because I grew up in Lagos as a Yoruba, a young person would not stretch out their hands to shake an older person. You only shake an older person when they extend their hands first to shake you. So the whole thing just threw me off a bit, A young person, outstretched arm. That was a great class, Kachi. I was thrown off a bit. Went to my WhatsApp group where my siblings were. I was like, you cannot believe these kids, man. So rude. So the cultural difference in terms of what respect is was different. And so it took me a bit to get up to speed with it. Even myself, when my professors would say, just call me Trish. I had the associate dean of the college say, just call me Trish. Trish is probably going to watch this sometime. But I was like, no, I cannot call you Trish. Now I call her Trish. But at the time, I said, Dr. Gott. I cannot call you Trish. The same thing. My professor was like, oh, just call me Brandon. I'm like, could not. I had so much respect to call them by their name. So that was a big shock. The other thing, again, because of the power distance, so here, it's a very low power distance culture. So even if you have a position as a professor, students feel like they can build a relationship with you. Yes. They can schedule office hours, talk about their concern. They can challenge their grades.
Yeah.
The first time I had a missing script. You know what that means in Nigeria? You write an exam, the professor just tells you, I cannot find your script, you have to take this class again next year. Yeah. And I went to the professor's office in Lagos State University to humbly appeal. I was told that I was a cultist. I was told that I was arrogant. Who gave me the audacity to come into the office to ask questions about my grades? I was threatened I was going to fail the class and I will never graduate. So that was my socialization. Wow. So first time I, graded an assignment in my class, I get an email from a student saying I'd like to come chat about my grade and why I got this and that. And I'm like, Okay, like, are you for real? Like, be for real.
Yeah.
Is this how it is here? So, that took me time to like learn. Like, the culture is different, and students do have a right. They practice democracy here, not just in government, but in their day-to-day life. Everybody's equal. Everybody should have a voice, and everybody can use their voice. So that's an adjustment for me. So in terms of like, culture shock. This is my biggest culture shock. The relationship between professors and teachers here is more high touch,
Right.
Professors take a genuine personal interest in you. They open up their offices for you to come talk about concerns and learn. So that was required a lot of mental, cognitive shifts. And then in terms of like the positives though, I don't think there are positives. Yes. So I think that growing up in Nigeria made me a lot more resilient, made me a lot flexible. And so, I was comfortable with ambiguity. Grew up in Nigeria, comfortable with ambiguity, not knowing what will happen the next minute. And so navigating grad school, teaching, not knowing how students are going to react to your message, how, they're going to make sense of ideas. I think that I was comfortable, I've been comfortable doing that because I was socialized, to be comfortable with ambiguity. So that helps. In terms of like my worldview and being able to bring something new to the classroom, yes. I think my background helps a lot. Students are always fascinated by my stories, but also my ability to apply these ideas practically, because Nigeria, there's no, I don't think any country on this planet needs leadership more than Nigeria. And so if I'm able to see how, when you've seen what's not worked, you can tell why we should take things seriously. So I think that's helped me a lot too, in terms of like how I teach and being able to bring in, a global perspective on issues. I think being Nigerian also, you're socialized to like learn more about the world than the average American person, because the things that happen in the world impacts your life. So the average American person is not so concerned about politics happening anywhere else than politics happening here. But I'm concerned growing up in Nigeria, because I know that whoever's president of the United States might have an impact on my life. I'm concerned about what's happening in France, because that can have an impact on my life. I'm concerned about what's happening even in Ghana next door to me, because that could have impact on my life. So you socialize to like want to learn more about the world around you when you grow up in a country that's so vulnerable like Nigeria. So I do think that it helps you develop like a more well-rounded global perspective that I bring into my classroom to help my students learn.
Awesome. So I have two final questions for you. Let's say you had an opportunity to speak to a young person that is maybe 20 years old, maybe a teenager. Let's stick to the 19-year-old you, who is still trying to find themselves, especially knowing that you talk a lot about self-leadership. What practical advice would you give to that person? Let's stick to your top three.
So the first thing is there's no such thing as finding yourself. You just grow into who you are. Okay. I think we socialize our young people to like find somebody outside of who they are. You're already you. There's nothing to find. You just need to grow into, become more confident, about your own ideas, your own, the choices that you're making, being more conscious about them. You're already you. In terms of like, finding, a career path, I don't think any 19-year-old should obsess a lot about figuring out what they want to do for the rest of their lives, because no one figures it out at 19. So it's about like doing what feels right, like doing the next right thing. So think about it. At 19 years old, I was a makeup artist and I was, doing laundry business. I don't think my brain could have conceived that I'll be teaching at a top public business school in the United States at 19. And so if I was fixated about, I want to become a professor, I probably not even have the knowledge at the time to, to figure out this path. So do the next right thing. What feels right? What feels right to you right now?
A lot of things could feel right to a 19-year-old.
Just do one. And so it's just pick one and do it. Well, you say a lot of things like negative things.
Yeah.
I mean,
because you're going through.
Let's put a positive spin to this now. Do the next right positive thing. So whether that's like, oh, I want to like go to college, okay, do that now. Work and go to college. Whether that's, oh, I want to find a job at the bank, do that now, okay, find a job at the bank. And then, you know, your interests might change. So it's just being in tune with yourself and what you're interested in, and then finding the opportunities that align with what you're interested in. But, you know, that's the first thing I'd say. Just grow into who you are. Just keep taking the steps, taking the right steps, the next right steps, and then, you know, you end up in beautiful places. That's the way I think about it. The other thing is, in terms of like, what was your other question?
Still the same question. So I just asked you for 3.
So 3 advice, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. So just do the next right thing. The second thing is build capacity. So, you know, learn a skill, whatever it is. You know, I learned how to be a makeup artist. That's a skill set. I mean, it's not very like, how will I put it? It's not prestigious skill, you know, but it's an important one that got me going, allowed me to fend for myself. But like, learn a skill, develop capacity. So whether that's improving your public speaking, whether that's improving your other interpersonal skills, how you show up in small groups, you know, how you interact, you know, whether that's like, you know, improve your reading skills, whether it's like picking up a book and discipline yourself to sit down and get through an entire book, do that. Whether it's a tech skill, you know, it's like, I feel like everyone needs a tech skill these days, you know, so just build capacity around something, because people would pay for what people would eventually pay for the value that you bring.
Absolutely.
I remember one of my mentors, George Onari, always told me then, when I was, you know, doing all this non-profit work and doing therapy for free and all of that, and I'm, you know, doing trainings for free and all of that. He's like, Kachi, you bring value, like you bring value. All these things you're doing for free now, someone is going to pay you a lot for it down the line. And so it's about like always bringing value. And so to bring value though, you need to like build capacity. Okay, so I'd encourage any young person to find something they're passionate about and build capacity around it. Find something that interests them. They may not be super passionate about it, but build capacity around that. And the final thing is find mentors. At 19, I think that what basically helped me was that I was surrounding myself with people who were older than I was. You know, at 20 years old, I had friends who were like 35, 40, you know. When I was 25, my friends were like 60, 55. Okay, so like, it's almost like you have your own personal board of directors.
Right.
So, you know, and when it comes to seeking mentors, the range of the mentors is more important than the depth of the relationship. So find people who know different kind of things. Okay, so because
the range is more important than depth.
The range is way more important than depth, because people can only give so much. Think about it. If you have a mentor now, they have a very busy life. You want to build, you might really want to build a very deep relationship with them, but they may not have the bandwidth to do that right now, you know, because they have other priorities. So you may not be privileged enough to build really deep, long, meaningful relationships with them. But if you have a range of people, just imagine the exposure you're going to have at a very young age. And so I had that. I had, you know, a mentor who worked in the oil and gas sector, and one who worked in the health sector, and one who was a teacher, and one who worked in the bank. And so I was exposed to a real range of things, you know. I had a mentor who worked in real estate. And so, because you know, at that point, like I said, you're growing into yourself. You're still learning about what you're interested in. You're still learning a lot about yourself, and so you never know which conversations you're going to have that's going to like set up that fire inside of you. And so that's why range is important. So that's what I'd say. I'd say grow into who you are. Just do the next right thing. Develop capacity around something you're passionate about, you're interested in. Surround yourself with people who are older than you. I mean, you could make friends your age, 19, but think about it. The 19-year-old kid is going to tell you about life through the lens of a 19-year-old kid. You know? You're already living that life. So find people who have been there, done that, and get a range of those, and it's going to help you significantly down the line.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So the other question I had, these are our final question, is I'm an immigrant living in the US or wherever, and I'm hoping, one of my dreams really is to become a professor. What would you advise? Or what key steps?
So, I mean, the first thing is to right now apply for a graduate program. Okay. So, if you have a BSc, go get your master's degree. If you already have a master's degree, go get your Ph.D. First thing I'd say. So, higher ed, you require I think the entry point is a graduate degree. Okay, so and a doctorate.
That's for PhD.
So, I mean, you can get opportunities if you have a master's degree in higher ed, but you would not grow. So, you could be an adjunct professor, if you have a master's degree, but you would not, you probably have like a couple classes you're teaching. You would not grow within the system. So, just go ahead, get a PhD, knock that out of the way, burn the candles, get that done. That's the first step. Now, while you're doing your PhD, I think that the people who go on to become professors, they carve that part, they do the work while they're doing their PhDs. And so that's doing a lot of research and publishing articles if you can. I did not do enough of that when I was in doing my PhD. I wish I did more of that. But yeah, so doing original research, collaborating with professors and writing papers and publishing.
Right.
It's the first thing you need to do. The second thing, if you want to teach, if you want to become a professor down the line, is actually get teaching experience while you are a graduate student. Because what makes you competitive, and the higher ed market is very challenging right now, but what makes you competitive is having what we call like teaching evaluation. So when you're a student, remember getting those notes saying you should evaluate your professor at the end of the semester. So those teaching evaluations, the professor gets them at the end of the semester, and when you are applying to jobs as a professor, you need to submit teaching evaluations. So they want to look at what your students think about you. So can you imagine when my first teaching evaluation, I had a student say, like, I cannot even understand his accent. He has a very strong Nigerian accent.
Oh my goodness.
I had students say things like, I don't even know why he's in the classroom. Early days. So I had to keep working on my craft and improving. And by the time when I was finishing my PhD, most of my teaching evaluations were perfect scores, 5 out of 5. So I think that helped to get me the job, because when you submit that, they look at that as, okay, the students rate him very highly, then I think that we should give him a chance. So getting good teaching evaluations, improving your teaching, getting that teaching experience very early on, building quality relationship with your faculty members. Because I think about the job that I have now. Again, think about range, So the job that I have now, one of my professors basically, within his network on LinkedIn, had someone posted the job opportunity, which he saw, then sent to me saying, hey, Kachi, I think you should apply for this. But if I did not have a relationship with him, he would not be thinking about me when he finds those opportunities. So, building a relationship with your professors is great. And then, that also helps you, because they've been in the game for a very long time. They can tell you what the selection committee are looking for. They can help you prepare. I had 3 of my professors basically sit down with me, one after the other, basically coaching me through the interview process and how to prepare. Because one of the things you have to do while interviewing for the job as a professor is you have to teach a mock class. So you come down to the school to get students in the class and professors in the class. You have to teach the class, and the professors in the class would rate you, and the teachers would rate you. And so they basically coached me through how to navigate that. And so building those relationships are important. So that's what I would say. So get a graduate degree, get your PhD. While you're doing your PhD, publish a couple journals. The second thing is to get some teaching experience while you're there, get some good teaching evaluations, and then build good relationships with your faculty members who are going, so you're holding back that yawn, but build good relationship with your faculty members who will go help you prepare for the job market. And make you competitive for jobs. But that's the part.
Awesome. Finally, I told you, I just knew that there was going to be one extra question.
Okay.
What challenges have you experienced as an immigrant, and how have you been able to overcome them? you can share a few.
I mean, just the immigration challenge. So I can talk all day about the challenges navigating the immigration system here. We all know, widely documented, how broken the immigration system in the U.S. is. And so, I came here on an F1, initially on a J1 visa. Nobody quite explained to me what that meant as an exchange student, what a J1 visa was. And so what that meant was I had a 2-year restriction, having come here on an exchange visa. So when I finished, I mean, the restriction is you cannot adjust to like H1B or permanent residence when you have the J1. So when I finished, I went back home. Thankfully, I stayed 1 year in Nigeria before coming back for my PhD, but I did not fulfill the 2-year mandatory homestay requirement on the J1. So when I finished my PhD and I got my job, I started my job on an OPT, and I tried to get a H1B visa. I was denied.
Oh,
so I had to go back to Nigeria.
Wait, hold up. So you went back to Nigeria and stayed for how long?
For 1 more year.
No.
I tell you. So imagine that, you finish your PhD, get a really nice job, you're living your life, you have your whole life ahead of you, and then you're told you're denied a work permit, you have to go back to Nigeria. Just imagine that you live here and all the predictability of the US system,
So is there a way to bypass that? Because
there's no way.
I personally, maybe I should.
There's no way.
You know someone that...
It depends on the program.
Oh, now I remember. The person actually was on J1, moved to G4, World Bank.
So you get,
and then they're still here.
Yeah, so they're probably not going to get a H1B, they're probably not going to get an EB2.
They said there is an exempt permit.
So, here's the thing. Not to turn this into an immigration consulting thing. But here's the gist, It depends on the program. If the program is funded by the US government, they tell you that you can get an exemption, that you can get a waiver.
I see.
Here's what the waiver entails. You need to get to your ambassador, the ambassador to the US. So for example, I came here, I'm a Nigerian. The US government sponsored my trip.
Right.
It's a US funded program. I need to get the Nigerian ambassador to the US. To write a letter asking the US government to waive it, that they are okay with me staying back in the country, staying back here. That's the first step. Now imagine as a Nigerian, think about that. How hard would it be for you to find a Nigerian ambassador to the US? Interestingly, I was lucky. I found a connection. The ambassador did write me a letter. It was an interesting point. The US and Nigerian ambassador just died. A new ambassador was coming in. She was from Abia State.
Ooh.
We found a connection, She wrote me a letter. The second step is to get the US consulate in Nigeria to then approve that waiver. I mean, that's the first challenge, just navigating the J1 thing. The second challenge is, you come back here. On the average, if you are, you finish school, you need a job to file a work permit on your behalf. Now, these organizations have a cap, and so they put you in a lottery system,
right?
And you might be fortunate to get one. You might not. You might not be fortunate. Now, I was fortunate because higher ed, there's no cap. They can file a H1B for you directly. But to go from a H1B to green card is also very tricky. Okay, so I mean, depends on your. So, for example, in higher ed, if you're a tenure track professor, it's a lot easier to get a green card because the school basically would file on your behalf, and they'll file something called the EB1B. So the EB1B is for outstanding professors and researchers, but it's specific to tenure track faculty members.
I see.
So for example, I'm not a tenure track faculty member. I have more administrative responsibility and programming responsibility. I'm a non-tenure track professor. And so what that means is I have more teaching responsibilities and administrative responsibilities, but very few research. My current role, no research responsibility.
But the person, you can still do EB1A.
Now, you can do EB1A, but the school would not file on your behalf. You file by yourself. And so EB1A, you know how that plays out. You need to be, extraordinary ability. So 10 criteria you need to meet, 3 minimum. I like to say you need to to be competitive, put yourself at 5, you know, work to get like 5 of those minimum. So that's what I did.
Oh, nice.
And so I got EB1A. But, you know, you think about that, you know, if you're a young person here who just graduated, EB1, I mean, you could file EB1 you don't have to worry about premium processing. But if you have to do the premium processing, you need $3,805 in total to file that.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to be in a position where I could afford it, but just think about folks who are just coming out of college, coming out of masters, and not able to do that themselves. That's a big commitment. So those are the challenges within the system. Now, again, like I said, I'm fortunate I got the EP1A, and I'm thankful I did. But it's just one challenge after the other. It's like you feel like you're Mario navigating these challenges. One after the other.
Yeah.
But those are the basic challenges that I had, like every other Nigerian who's here. But shout out to the Nigerians though, we're getting that EB1 consistently. Extraordinary abilities, we're killing it.
That's actually what I did as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
What does living beyond borders mean to you?
So you know that Nigerian saying that says like, whenever you always remember where you're from.
Yeah.
Living beyond borders for me is constantly thinking about what I can do to improve the quality of life of my loved ones back home in Nigeria. But not just my loved ones, just people in general back home. So it's understanding that it's almost like you're an ambassador here.
Right.
Like you have to represent. You see what we say, like shout out to Nigerians here, like that's that collective pride, knowing that we're here, we've had to navigate like real challenging situations back home, we're here, but we're not here for ourselves. Because if you think about it, like one of my favorite musicians, his name is Dave Santan. He basically, one of his sayings is like, being rich, when your people are starving, it's like flying first class on a crashing plane. It's no point, you know. It's like people who are rich in Nigeria right now, and everyone around them is starving. Yeah. It's like flying first class on a crashing plane. Wow. What's the point? Like it's not fun being rich when people around you are broke, you know? Because it's only a matter of time before they eat you up, you know? Or only a matter of time before they drag you down. So it's constantly understanding like you're not here just for yourself. You know, there's a bigger reason why you're here. Absolutely. And so it's thinking about how we use the resources, you know, in a way, you know, diligently using the resources and the privileges you have access to. Right. In a way that benefits your own people. That's what living here. That's what makes this place worth it. Because think about the sacrifices we have to make to be here. You're not eating the same quality of food you eat back home. You know, think when I went back home for 1 year, I almost did not come back. I'm not playing. Because you like eat the food fresh, the fish is fresh from the water.
Organic.
Everything is organic. Here you have to be rich to eat organic food. The poor people eat organic food back home, you know, so like the meat is fresh just from no, I don't. Only the bougie people in Nigeria go to like the stores to buy meat. You go to the market, the meat is killed that day. It's fresh. The taste is different. Yeah. You know, like just think about that alone. Just the food, just the life, the people, how vibrant the people are, how collective.
Community
You know. Think about how isolated many Nigerians feel while they're here. It's because the culture here is more individualistic here. So you give that up. You give up the food. In Lagos, I was 30 minutes from the beach. I could just, you know, after I teach my classes remotely, drive down to the beach and hang out. Just think about what you're giving up, the life. Then your family, you know, extended family. Many people here would have kids who would never have cousins around. There's so much sacrifice, so many things we have to give up as a people to remain here. And so the life here itself is not worth it if it's not in relation to the people who matter to you. Right. Back home. So that's what, you know, living beyond borders means to me. Is like constantly thinking about how to extend the privileges that I have to folks back home to improve the quality of their own lives. Amazing.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us, for watching up until this point. You are the real VIP. So I have 3 requests for you right now. Firstly, please like this video and subscribe to this channel so that you get notified every single time that we release a video. Secondly, share this with your network or at least with someone that you know needs to hear Kachi's story. And then finally, we would love to continue the conversation in the comment section. So let us know what part of this episode really stood out to you. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye. We did it!
Awesome.